So my own family, I grew up in monoracial black worldview, right? And in that, no matter what else negative message I got, no one allowed me to think of myself as anything other than creative and smart. Like I could be failing everything. And I swear my mother or my grandmother or my grandfather, there was no time because they were too busy telling me how smart I was. They were too busy telling me that I was an intelligent person. So even as I was failing, they didn't let that become my identity. Right. Like, so I failed a lot and I got F's in classes or whatnot, but I was never allowed to believe that it was because I was a dummy. The Sanford and Son stuff, you big dummy. You know, I never had that, which was very powerful because I did fail a lot. I failed a lot, but I never really got the mindset of somebody that it was because I was bad in some way, shape, or form. I would bring that up to say it's very important because I think that's not the natural pathway for all Black boys, that even when you fail, you're being told by everybody around you that you're creative and smart. Like, I think it's the opposite. I think people do fall into the big dummy thing. They start like, making it about you and you ain't never gonna be nothing.
It is Freedom Friday and you are still not free.
Welcome to Freedom Friday. It is Friday, and you are still not free, but hopefully you are freer after this hour with Sharif El-Mekki and me. Today we're missing Ish. He's got some other engagements today, but today we want to talk about Black men on college campuses. Why is the number shrinking? It became a big deal on social media in this last week because Toure, who has a big platform, put out something about this article that's in the New York Times saying that Black men particularly among all men, are shrinking in a way that's becoming very concerning. Men, period, on college campuses are going down. I heard one person recently refer to Burlington University as Girlington University because I think the number of men there and the number of women is so lopsided now. So this is a problem with men, period. And there's a national discussion of why are men not going to college anymore? I've seen just on that point, I've seen a couple of interesting takes. One of the interesting takes that I saw was from a white feminist sexologist who is talking to women about the lopsidedness
Like, is it Dr.
of the
Ruth or
pool.
somebody else?
What's that?
Was it Dr. Ruth or somebody else?
No, no, no. Dr.
No.
Ruth, she's got like offspring now. She's got like grandchildren types who are doing this work now.
Sexologist. Like,
Um,
man, I haven't heard that term before.
But she introduced me to a term I hadn't paid attention to, and the term is called bottom half men. And this is the men that are fall within the bottom half, and there's a psychology to them, there's the economics to them, there's a lifestyle to them that hasn't been explored and studied as its own thing. So she talks about bottom half men becoming more frustrated and frustrating women more because they're not up to the game of, of coupling up with women and all that stuff. So, in her theory about bottom half men, there's also a professor named Scott Galloway who's also talking a lot about the perils of men. It's so terrible for them. He's talking about how it takes them 200 swipes on Tinder and the dating apps before they find one date, and they're increasingly falling into bad social media habits, video games, kind of dropping out of society in ways that they used to participate. They're just giving up type of thing. But specifically to Black men, this is, it's that whole thing around when America catches a cold, Black men catch pneumonia, or Black America catches pneumonia. Well, amongst Black men, it's even a little bit more dire. And the article that you and I, Sharif, saw that has started all of this from the New York Times, it said that this is worse at HBCUs than PWIs. It said that Black men on college campuses like Howard or elsewhere down to like 20% or so. That's alarming. I would have thought that statistic was a lie before I saw that article. If someone had said that to me, I'm like, man, shut up. You're lying. And it's true. So anyways, Sharif, we're going to watch this clip real quick. I know you're going to have we're both probably going to have better reasons for why we think this might be happening. But I want to show you one of the takes that is becoming kind of common on TikTok. So let's watch this video.
Black men are not going to college simply because they don't want to. The gender enrollment gap keeps growing. A picture is worth 1,000 words. They're lazy. They're not going to PWIs. They're not going to HBCUs. They're not in the Ivy Leagues. They're not going to trade school. They're not completing trade school because the completion rate for trade school is only about 30 something percent. Completion rate of apprenticeship is only about 40 something percent. So not even half of them are completing trade schools and apprenticeships. Entrepreneurship is less than 2% of them are men, Black men. The military makes up about 15%. Where are they? We can blame it on everything and everybody, but a lot of them simply just don't see the value in education after high school. They don't value it, they don't prioritize it.
Yeah, I mean, her starting off with black men are lazy to me just sets her, it forecasts her orientation about her perception of black men. And unfortunately, that is a pervasive perspective about black men. It's a trope. It's a, I can't even say it's a stereotype. It's a false stereotype because, that's so different than what I've seen in my, half a century of on this earth, and unfortunately, she's parroting what white supremacists have said ever since we stopped working for free.
So if I were to take up her side a little bit, this is what I would say if I were to take up her side a little
Hmm.
bit, which is that culture is powerful. And the United States culture is powerful, and it trains you to be whoever you are from an early age. If you're Chicano in the United States, it trains you. If you are Asian in the United States, it trains you. So there is no. It's not a mystery that fully formed adults form the way that they form. If you look at the country, and you look at how people grow, where they get their information from, what their conditions are, what their social settings are, what type of resources they have in life. If you add all of that up, it's not a mystery how people become who they are. And I would just say maybe it's possible that the culture kit that you get when you were born a black child with a bunch of potential that God gives you, God given potential when you're born, the kit that you get as a culture that grows you up makes it not mysterious why you turn out the way that you turn out. But here's what I would say to you, and you tell me, like, push back on this idea that, okay, I just explained why it could happen, but the outcome of that is we end up with very immature black men. We end up with black men who are immature to the point that they don't participate in normal family behavior and community behavior and leadership behavior in the way maybe that they once did, right? And I'll give you one example. Um, in your life and in your network, if someone was coming to attack the community, um, black men understood the assignment. They understood come to the front of the line, protect the women, and show that whole thing. Rosewood, Tulsa, Move, in Philly, whatever it is that we were under, the black men were there, right? There has been a social conditioning since COINTELPRO, in my mind, that has made us entertainment addicted, addicted to white corporate bad black entertainment that programs us in a way to be exactly who many of us become. And if it weren't for, like in your case, Islam, in some other cases, church, in some other cases, community organizations that keep, cohesion together. If it's not for that, you get a very different type of black product. Is it at all sympathetic to you, the idea that even if we don't want to blame black men for where they are, we do have to acknowledge that many of them are being malformed by the culture that we put them into?
Listen, so one, I can't really dispute, like what you're saying. I think there's layers to and complexities to it, right? And so I 100%, agree with you as far as like what gets pumped in. And we've talked about this a lot. Like, if we're ingesting, you use the like kind of the I forget what you call it, like what do you call it? Like the hardware, like if it's injected, if you have malware like
Mhm,
injected
mhm.
in you, you've used that
Yeah.
analogy pretty powerfully. That if that's injected into your system and you don't have a way to rid that toxins out of you, at some point you're almost like a zombie to the system. You're just like implementing other people's plans, right? And so there's portions of that, absolutely 100%. And it makes me think of just like humbly how much as a teenager I derided Dolores Tucker.
Hmm.
And as
Hmm.
a
And
teenager,
for
I was
people
just
who
like,
don't
I
know who
can't
Dolores
stand
Tucker
that
is,
lady. She don't know
tell
what she.
people what she said. Tell
So
people
Dolores
who
Tucker
Dolores
basically
was.
said,
Yeah.
and this was early on, but it was like first, like when people were, it was NWA, it was Schoolie D here in Philly, it was like gangster rap basically. When it went from the this is fun and we're just talking about the message all the way to like, hey, I'm gonna shoot you up. And she basically, and she was here in Pennsylvania, and she basically was saying like, hey, this is horrific. It should be banned. It should be censored. This is a terrible thing. Nobody should be listening to this. And people came hard at, like rejected her and really, pushed back hardcore. And it sounded like, a lot of the finger waving and you guys, blah, 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 this generation is terrible kind of thing. And I remember as a teenager, I was like, man, she don't know what she's talking about. This don't influence anybody. Da, da. Now older, I'm like, she was damn right. Like this does, like it is a constant injection. And but I would say the layers of it is, even with all the benefits and the privilege that I had with the family and community and early schooling that I had, I didn't want to go to college. I didn't want to go to college. I didn't enjoy school that much to think like, oh yeah, I want to go and listen to more people talk at me about stuff that I don't agree with. I don't believe, like, I that wasn't appealing to me. So initially, me and my friends, listen, this is how crazy it was. I don't talk about this a lot, but initially, me and my high school friends were going to join the buddy system in the Marines, because that recruiter was like, "Oh, y'all can all stay together, and y'all can home." And to us, that was the most important thing: our friendships, my homies, us being together. And so even to think, like, with all the privilege, everything I read, I was like, I don't want to do more of this. I wasn't enjoying school. I'm already, like some of the experiences you had where you're like trying to do a report or you're pushing back. My English teacher gave me a D in English. Like, as much as I love to read and I don't love to write, but I write, like, you know what I mean? Like, they wanted to give me a D because they didn't like my pushback on some of their framing and the fact that we never had black authors. So, of course I'm pushing back. Like, why are we always reading European art authors? So I'm like, more of that? You know what I mean? 4 more years of that? And I graduated high school, I'm 16. So I'm like 17, 18, 19, 20. Like, oh man, I don't know if I want to do this. So we're going to join anyway, cut it short. We're going to join the buddy system. And the thing about it was what ended up happening was two things. One, my uncle who was in the Marine said, they're lying to you. The buddy system is just for basic training. After that, y'all get split up. That was horrible that was horrific. We were like, man, that would have just been like a summer and then we'd have been split up, but we'd already signed the papers, it'd be too late. But the second thing, I was only 16. And to be 16 and sign up, you had to get your parents' signature. So I went to my mom and I'm grown, I know what I'm doing. I need you to sign this. She didn't argue. She said, well, I'm not going to sign it, but just go ask your father to sign it. I never got the courage to ask my father to sign it. So it just ended there. Later, I was like, she's so smart. Like, she didn't argue. She didn't push, but she's like, oh, just, you should have your father do that. And I was like, I'm not asking him, And so they just died. I ended up going to school.
Uh, so you got in like by not a direct shot to getting in. Yeah, I had watched lots of TV growing up. For me, culture was very important. Good Times and the Jeffersons, and Archie Bunker, and I watched a lot of sitcoms. I watched a lot of things like Matlock, and you
Archie
know,
Bunker in
um,
the White House
yeah,
now,
so,
just
so,
a more crass version of him.
so I was about to say Archie Bunker on steroids now has become president. Um, but the depictions that I saw of college to me felt a little out of touch, out of reach for me, but desirable. Like, I wanted to live that life that I saw people living. I mean, it was always, first of all, it felt very much like a rich person thing or middle class thing. Like, this is what you do after. I didn't have a ton of people around me who were actually going the straight path, leaving high school and going to college and having that whole kind of college life. So I saw it in popular culture, but it wasn't available to me. I didn't measure up for it to happen. I didn't do well academically. I did very poorly towards the end of my high school career. So it just wasn't available to me, but I never stopped wanting to do it. As a matter of fact, I went straight from high school to finish high school in the community college in a program at the community college. And at that time, it was free in California, community college. Like you go to community colleges for free. So it was like 13th grade in some way. So I started, but didn't finish. Lots of life stuff. I had to work at the same time. It got to the point where it was hard to schedule things because my work schedule they were not very forgiving with the type of jobs that I had. Like, what do you
Right.
mean you have a class? No, you're on the shift.
Yeah,
You're on
yeah,
the
you
schedule
better
for that
clock
shift.
in, get that little time
Yeah.
card. Yeah.
So if you had to give up one or the other, I had to give up the community college. But I made multiple other community college attempts too. I've got so many dangling credits. I had credits like multiple tries and starts, but it was never the real college experience of when you go and I'm going to be here for 4 years, and it wasn't that. That came much later in life. I had at some point, so many dangling credits that it ended up being an AA degree. And then that gave me opportunity to go to 4-year college, but I went to three of them, three different 4-year colleges, right? So none of it was the normal on campus experience. I don't know how you would count me, like, because a lot of this is around how many black men there are on campus. I don't know if I would have even been counted while I was doing my degree.
Yeah, they call it what, non-traditional students, right? Which is a
Yes,
significant, I forget the percentage, but that's a significant
it's huge.
number
It's huge.
of students. And yeah, I agree with you. I don't know if that counts. I don't know. I have to reread the do a close read with the article. I don't remember if they mentioned community colleges at all, which is also a
They did not.
significant number.
No. And they didn't mention trade schools, vocational schools, and the reason, the number of men and black men overall that see the military, like you just said, as their college, more that's way bigger than with women. So this idea of why are there no men here? You could say the opposite of why aren't there any women on the military bases? Like you could say the same thing. But for a lot of men, other routes are available to them that get them a living wage in ways that the reason that there's so many women, one of the reasons that there's so many women going to college is because some of the other avenues of earning aren't available to women as much. The top non-college occupations for women are not living wage occupations. The top occupations, non-college occupations for men, are above a living wage, right? So like there is this whole world of male work that still could uh I don't want to say that makes college unnecessary, but it definitely makes it that you could still
It's
live.
appeal. I mean, I speak to students all the time. They're like, "I want to get to work. I want to do something. I want to like, wait a minute, Whereas for a lot of people, and it wasn't that I didn't love reading, but I know I've met a lot of youth who are like, I want to do 4 years of reading and writing and listening and having to listen to a teacher or professor that hasn't engaged me. Like my experience of the first 13 years was not something that makes me say, sign me up for another, 4 to 6, right? Like, their experiences in school, I think, and that's another thing that, people talk about. Like, boys are often told to like perform like girls in schools. And there's no, and with this kind of like attack on masculinity and just making like, oh, it's just toxic to be masculine, means it erases the experiences of boys and says like, no, everybody learns in one way. Like this is the only way school should be, and be like a girl. You know what I mean? Where, and not saying girls have it easy. Black girls do not have it easy in school. Latina girls do not have it easy. And there are ways that boys often, not all the time, again, with broad brushes, but you can see a consistent pattern where they're looking to do something more than sit tight. And any social scientist, psychologist that's actually grounded in the work, and I'm not talking about like the racist guys or have this race theories and all this kind of stuff, but that there are times that, and let's just say some students don't perform in the way that people just want them to sit in rows with their hands folded and just behave in the way that I think you should behave. There's some things that are just developmentally appropriate that starts to manifest, and people always often can't handle it, and so if I'm constantly being derided in school, being put down, being pushed out, being told, given certain messages. And then as you started the conversation, then I'm also being told outside of how to act, this is how you should show up, this is how you should display your manhood. That's a toxic brew if it's not something to counter. You almost need this counterintelligence on a positive side, right? Like if what's being constantly pushed to you and talked about and said what men should be doing, and particularly black men as a young boy, and you're hearing that, there has to be a pushback in some kind of way, some kind of buffer to at least detox it or dull it, at least where it doesn't again make you become the zombie and just implementing other people's programming, right? And I think that part, we don't have enough of that. We do need a cultural revolution in our communities for our young men, because and I shared this before, my mama used to say they're trying to brainwash you, and if anybody's going to brainwash you, it's going to be me. And as a kid, I reach out, like, I don't want to be brainwashed at all. But like as I got older, I understood what she was saying. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're going to be breathing so much of this stuff that I have to forcefully make sure that I'm like blowing the fan to clear out that fog. If not, you will get the hazy eyes and start just, well, this is how I'm supposed to be. This is real. This is keeping it real. And who told you that's keeping it real? Who told you that's the definition of real? Right?
Keeping it real stupid
Yeah.
sometimes. That's what I used to say. I used to tell people,
That's
yeah,
real,
you are
like real
keeping it real. You're
stupid.
keeping it real stupid. I mean,
Yeah,
if I'm
man.
being honest about my own life, first of all, none of my children are getting this message. So none of my children are getting the message that they are deficient by design, that they are deficient by birth. They don't have the original sin of being black male, black women, whatever. Now my kids are multiracial. They have a different set of complexities to deal with when it comes to identity formation. Just like Chicano people have a different set of identity kind of switches that they have to pull. My kids do too, but they're not getting the message that they're deficient from birth, right? And I know that your children are not getting the message from that they're deficient in any way from birth. My when I think about my own family, I grew up differently than my kids are growing up, right? So my own family, I grew up in monoracial uh, black worldview, right? And in that, no matter what else negative message I got, no one allowed me to think of myself as anything other than creative and smart. My mother, like I could be failing everything. And I swear my mother or my grandmother or my grandfather, there was no time for me to, because they were too busy telling me how smart I was. They were too busy telling me that I was an intelligent person. So even as I was failing, they didn't let that become my identity, right? Like, so I failed a lot and I got F's in classes or whatnot, but I was never allowed to believe that it was because I was a dummy, the Sanford and Son stuff. You big dummy, you know, I never had that, which was very powerful because I did fail a lot. I failed a lot, but I never really got the mindset of somebody that it was because I was bad in some way, shape, or form. I would bring that up to say it's very important because I think that's not the natural pathway for all black boys. That even when you fail, you're being told by everybody around you that you're creative and smart. Like, I think it's the opposite. I think people do fall into the big dummy thing. They start like, making it about you and you ain't never going to be nothing. Now, you heard me say on the stage at your big event last year, last year, your big event, BMEC, for everybody listening, is like one of my favorite things to participate in ever. Room full of black male educators, room full of educators, period, room full of black folks who have a very positive outlook on each other and our children or whatnot. And I said on the stage, you put me on stage with Angela Davis. And I said, I want to give a shout out to Miss Grace from sixth grade because, and everybody was expecting me to say, because Miss Grace did something great for me or whatever. Miss Grace told me I was the most ignorant Negro she had ever met and that I was never going to be nothing. And she told our whole class that multiple times. And she wasn't rare in my life. So just as I'm seeing black teachers on TikTok right now who are women, black women teachers talking about black male boy children in a way that tells me that they are an other to them. They're talking about them as if they're not them, right? That is the typical, I think, path for a lot of black boys is they are put into the care of people that look just like them in life who aren't men. So there is an other rising in a way because for instance, like, and you could tell me whether you believe this is true or not. A lot of boys who go through sports get a different orientation, for instance, right? They got hard coaches, they got to run, they got to do things, you got to drop and give me 20 and all that type of stuff or whatnot, and listen, I always hated that nonsense too, by the way. Oh, y'all gonna run again. I got flat feet. I don't run. I don't listen. I run when a dog is chasing me. And they're like, no, you're gonna run around the thing now. You talked up. You're gonna run 3 laps. And the whole team's gonna be mad at you. Whatever. As much as I'm laughing about that, and I hate those type of interactions, those are different interactions. Those are man building interactions in a way that's different than someone telling you you're just lazy and you're not succeeding because you ain't worth nothing and blah blah blah. I'm not saying all these women say that, but I'm just saying this conversation I saw on TikTok had an awful lot of that. Black women teachers talking about black boys specifically in a way that didn't seem like they believed that those kids were smart, intelligent, and just failing the way that I did. I failed on some things, but I had people telling me that I was smart. I was intelligent.
Yeah. And I think it's a variation of the gender wars that it just seems way more pervasive than I remember. Maybe it's just social media where you just constantly you see men sniping at women, women sniping at men, but now it's also, I don't see it as much as, but I'm sure it's out there. It might not just be my algorithm. Black men teachers, the 3 or 4 who are around sniping at black girls. But I do see, and it's just more.
No, no, wait. Let's just stop there for a second. I don't see any videos of black male teachers talking about our girls are in trouble.
Yeah, yeah,
Our girls
I
are
haven't
horrible.
seen
And
I
our
was just like,
girls are
maybe it's
not
the
doing great.
algorithm, but I'm sure it's some idiot out there doing that, you know what I mean? But it's just I just don't put it past everybody, but, and it's a numbers thing too, right? But I do it is disheartening to see, anybody, but particularly, black women teachers, educators, talking about black boys, and not to say that there aren't challenges and issues societally that you know schools are microcosms of society, and so if it is hard to be black in America, if it's hard to be a black boy in America, it's going to be hard to be a black boy in American schools. You can't separate the two, but it's almost like, oh yeah, we understand that. Like, but when you get here, you should be, like this type. You should show up in this type of way. And again, I just think about like again all the. I think I bring a level of humility, to this because of the privilege that I had, the upbringing that I had, and I still struggled in a regular school setting. My GPA was terrible. I wasn't interested. I got into arguments with my professors. Like I had to actually, I got in a fight once and almost I had to get saved by a black woman who, I had to have a disciplinary hearing, man, in college. Almost got kicked out, and I remember, and I wish I could remember this woman's name so I could just find her and thank her profusely, let her know, like, her saving me. So I had this disciplinary hearing. And, fortunately, I got put on probation. I was able to stay. And then I remember a few months later, she was leaving. And I remember she called me in. She was going to another job. She called me to her office and she's like, Elmeki, I'm leaving, which means you have one less person to look out for you. So you better like really focus and think of and make good decisions. You know what I mean? And that like I was like, wow, like my advocate is leaving, which like kind of, you know, up the ante, so to speak. For my, the immaturity that I did have, the anger issues that I did have. Um, but I had an advocate. She wasn't, and I'm sure she could have gotten on, whatever, talk trap, blah blah blah. But she was like, "Listen, you have value, you have worth. I know you're angry about like how a lot of my anger was just like as a black kid in America, like I hated all the injustice, right? Like we were in college, like this is the time like Rodney, you watch Rodney King, getting beat down, which was consistent with what I had seen my entire life. And I look on campus and everything's just going about normal like that. And I was incensed, right? Like it was always, but that wasn't just that isolated incident. That was just the newer filmed version. That was our TikTok social media capture. Back then. But that so I just think about the differences of the type of folks who are in our communities who are like, hey, I see you, I know the struggles, and I'm going to support you, as opposed to I'm going to disparage you and spit on you while you're struggling.
So you just said a lot of things that lead me a different direction, like into like what would I do? Like what will we do if we had to fix this as a problem? There are too few black men on college campuses. The first thing that I would say, because you have engineering type of thinking, like things about pipelines, the thing that I would say immediately that you would agree with, I'm sure, is that you got to start earlier. If you can't talk about a problem like what's going on college campuses and pretend that that's like where it starts, right? So that would get you looking at 10th grade and ninth grade, and eventually you would end up in middle school, right? Like you would yeah, you could go earlier than that because I definitely think things like early childhood education and making sure that kids are reading by third grade, yeah, that's all smart. But middle school is where all hell breaks loose, especially for boys. And I don't think we have any discussion on any of this without talking about middle school reform, right? There's people that focus just on middle school,
Yeah,
uh, and
middle
they're experts.
years education is
Listen, and it's its own art form for the people that study that and actually do really well, like with middle schoolers or whatnot. I don't think we pay enough attention on them because for if we're talking about black boys, that's a point of decision making for lifetime decision making for boys. Like their paths could go different ways. So if I had to create some solutions, number one, I would say we have to pay attention to middle school for black boys and what's going on for them there. Two, we have to do a lot of what your work has got to become way more prominent to make sure that we have not just black teachers or not just teachers, but we have conscious teachers who've been trained specifically about the uniqueness of black children learning. Like the things that are about black learning, treat it as its own discipline, give it some sort of certified attention, like that you have studied it, you know what it means and all that. Because that's who should be teaching our kids, not people that have very low opinions of our children. What else would I add to that? I would add to this thing that you just said earlier. 50 Can did this big, massive study. I think it's the biggest study of parents, I think, or something. And then one of the discoveries there was that extracurriculars and electives play a big part in grades. So when they studied the kids that were getting A's and B's or whatnot, the one kind of super concurrent piece of information that went along with that was that they were the ones that were most likely involved in extracurriculars and had available to them extracurriculars. So the kids with the lowest grades had the least access to out of school time activities, to sports, to clubs, to different things. And when you looked at the kids that were doing very well, they had access to a lot of those things, and they were doing a lot of those things and participating in them. In the middle class, even the kids in the middle class who had resources at home who were not participating in those things did worse than the ones that were. So I would, as a solution, I would need to make sure that we were enriching the black boy life with lots of opportunity to participate in things. And I think we've done the opposite over many years. This is something that I would not have said to you a couple years ago because I was just a drive hard math and reading, blah, blah, blah. And people would say to me, well, you're sucking the joy out of education. And I'd be like, well, there ain't no joy in being illiterate. Like, like if you can't read, prisons are full of illiterate people. I don't know that that's joyful or whatever. I've changed on that just a little bit. One, because of this piece of study I just told you. When kids get involved in other things other than just drill and kill in the classroom on math and reading, they do better. They get better grades and they do other stuff, right? So that's what I would add is like creating more resources in the life of a black boy that gives them opportunities to do more than just drill and kill on math and reading and then call them failures and then have them taught by people that get online and say that the reason that they're the way they are isn't because the culture that they were born into in a country that hates them, but it's just because they're lazy and because they don't want to do anything. What would you add, Sharif, like from your vantage point, what's the solution? Like, what were the things you would put on the table?
No, I mean 100%. I agree with everything you said. I would just add a couple, additional stopgaps. So like middle school, 100%. I think any transition, and right now in America, there's a lot of transition in like middle school, and elementary, then start high school. So, and John Hopkins did study, a long time ago to like sixth grade. Like sixth grade is like should be a huge intervention point. You know, support, recognition, enrichment, all the things. And there's also a lot of studies about ninth grade as well, right? Because then you're transitioning out of that, and now you're into high school. And I would also talk about that, that longitudinal study again by John Hopkins and others, um, where third grade was a big intervention to have a black teacher, for example, like highly qualified, effective black teacher can work wonders, but particularly black teachers for black boys in poverty, right? Like that's what they showed. Like there was a huge difference, and this is still curious to me why it's not even like as you said, like even a bigger intervention and investment. If it shows that that child, that black boy who may be struggling, in a community that's under resourced, they have a single black teacher, between first and third grade, third and fifth grade, elementary school, they're up to 39% less likely to drop out of high school.
Hmm. Wow.
Up to 39% less likely to drop out of high school. So it just shows it's like there's something happening there, where that impression, that reinforcement, that modeling, that understanding and seeing like, hey, I was you when I was little. And if I don't have children, right now, I mean, but I have a nephew, I have a cousin. This level of familiarity and understanding of the culture that allows for this child to see themselves, and they're up to 29% more likely to enroll in college.
Hmm. Hmm.
So when you put all of that together, like everything that you said, I firmly believe in the enrichment. Like as a educator, one as a student, if it wasn't for football, wrestling, and track, I don't know what my high school experience would have been. I really don't know.
Okay, let's stop here for a second. Just you said wrestling, football, and track.
Right.
Okay. Um, those are all things that you participate in that have their own kind of discipline to them.
Hmm.
Like, one thing I know about wrestlers is you never wanted to fight a wrestler in a street fight or like in a fight. You just never wanted to fight. I hated wrestlers. Like when I was in high school, I hated them. Like even if you're a boxer, you don't want to fight a wrestler because wrestler's just going to take a few punches to the head, but then get you down on the ground and put you in a pretzel. You like,
Put you in a pretzel.
you know, right? But but it takes a while for you to become good at that, and it takes a while for you to learn all the little parts of it. And there's a sequence to what you learn and how you learn it, right? So you're participating in a sport. You're participating in wrestling. You're not just really participating in wrestling. You're learning
Yeah.
buries something there. Track is another one of those things. If you don't know about track, you just think it's just people running fast. No, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that
It's a
goes
whole lot
on
of
with
pain.
participation,
Track.
pain, and it's useless. It don't make no sense because you're never gonna want to run that fast anywhere in your life. No, just kidding, just kidding. Kids go into track, kids. I always felt like these are different personality types, so it's funny that you did all of them because the track personality type and the wrestling personality type and the football personality type are very different, but they all involve a discipline. They all involve rules of the game, how you play it, how do you train for it. That feels like they could apply to academics too.
I mean, yeah, and I think and that's the one thing. In the elementary school, it was just martial arts. Like our after school,
Now you add another one.
it was martial arts. Like that's what we did. Vita Sana. I shared this before. In the Thama Sasa, our elementary school, we didn't have gym. Our physical, but you had to have physical education class. Our physical education class was Vita Sana, African martial arts. Like so, for gym, there was no here's this and here's just we're doing whatever. It was like we're doing martial arts. We're training, and twice a week for recess, you had to train on your own. So they took away recess, and like recess is you self train. So it was a lot of it around like self discipline, self control, determination. Self determination was probably the thing that thread through all of those: goal setting, you know, competing, but also being coachable. It's a reason why my favorite teachers were often my teacher slash coaches too, because they also had these relationships outside, and they were men. My favorite teacher forever was Baba Changa. That was my martial arts teacher. He was a mentor for life until he passed away. Like it was that kind of thing. In high school at Overbrook, it was Coach Rosenfeld, it was Coach Matthews, it was Coach Jones, it was Coach Harding. Three black men and one white man, and I loved them. And the community that they built. Like even seeing Coach Rosenfeld died earlier this year. To see how many black men showed up at that funeral, and he had been coaching for like decades. But it just shows like just the pillar he was, not only in the community but in the school. And how many men he touched, even if he didn't teach them in the PE classes, the gym class, the physical education classes, he touched them outside of school. And so that out of school time that you said, I just want to emphasize how important it is. And again, we're not, yes, I'm talking about athletics because that's what interested me, but whether it's art, whether it's writing, whether it's STEM, whether it's whatever it is, like finding ways where a child can explore and experience and gain added perspective and be exposed, right? Like that exposure and experience. And again, often, like, what are our young men who may go to impoverished schools, that are in communities that are under resourced, have families that are like working like as hard as they can just to make ends meet, and then like there's often a lack of opportunity again. And so when you add all of this, so even an intervention, we're talking about black men, you got this administration that's saying, no, you can't intervene for black men, you can't have a program for black. So we're seeing the issues and the challenges, and we're like, hey, some of this starts early where they're blocked from opportunity early on. But what they're saying is, if you intervene and give a race-based opportunity, then it's going to be problems. And this is what schools are going through right now. Organizations are going through right now. But this is an area we should be doubling down on for the equity, because we're saying like, hey, this school doesn't have the right. You go to some of these communities, like the rich, wealthy, so the amount of resources and opportunity, just let's say out of school time, what their rec centers look like, what their libraries look like, what the programming look like, how many parks I went to a community a couple years ago. They have 5 parks in the same neighborhood. It was, I was just like, that's another park. That's another
Yeah.
park. Right?
Yeah.
Like it was crazy to me, because that's not what, like, man, you got to go through 20 neighborhoods to find a park, in some of our spaces,
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just like having that well-rounded opportunity, because I think the biggest thing is the exposure and experiences that we should be providing, that often certain group of students don't have. Then they're told, here's the only thing that you should be doing. As you said, like, you should be in entertainment, and that's it. Entertain us with your body, entertain
And
us with your
sports.
voice,
Yeah.
entertain
Yeah.
us, you know what I mean? But that's it. That's your role in society. You are our jester. You are America's jester. Make us laugh, make us smile, make us cheer. And if you can't do that, you're worth less or worthless. And so the one point that you were gonna say, like you said, your child and my child aren't getting those messages. I would push back on that. We're not giving that message, but as far as like the message, if they're on social media, they're seeing that message. They are getting the message.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that's inoculating for our kids is the fact that even when they come across that message, it's almost like they've had a vaccine. They've had a cultural vaccine,
But that
right? Like,
vaccine has to
so
constantly get a booster shot.
yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Like,
I
so
mean, well, I mean, like,
you're working
listen,
overtime to reinforce, just like your mom did for you. It wasn't a
yeah,
one
and
time thing; it's a constant thing. Because if not, if that falls off,
yeah.
it can
But
seep
everybody
in.
around you too participating, like your whole family system, your grandfather's reinforcing it.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
imagine a kid like your kid who your grandfather's enforcing it. It's not just your dad. It's
Right.
not just your
It's the
mom.
whole community, and it's
It's the whole
Baba Changa.
community. So
It's
I can't think of a better inoculation, but there's a lot of kids that don't have
they don't have that. Yeah.
that inoculation, right? So here's where I would end on all of this. Number one, here we are, two black men, and we have very similar ideas about college. Like, well, I wouldn't say the similar ideas. I don't want to speak for you, but you said, it wasn't something that you really
It
wanted to
wasn't
do, but
appealing. No, it was
you went anyways and you did it and you succeeded at it. It was something I wanted to do, but I just felt very insignificant in being able to do it. But here's where I think the rub is for me is that so what? So then I became a dad, and there's something different now. My job isn't to sit around and think about, oh my God, I did so badly. And my biggest point of pride is, my oldest son that everybody hears me talk about all the time. I didn't know whether or not he was going to do what he did, but so I had to prove it to myself that it was possible just to go through straight through school and go straight through high school and go straight to college and live on a college campus and do all this stuff that I wanted to do that I couldn't do. And it was my proof of concept. That was my proof of concept child. And the funny thing that I like to bring up sometimes is my son now, who's about to go to college next year. He was like 3 or 4, I don't know how old, when my oldest went to college, and I can remember when we were moving my oldest in, the one who's about to go to college now was a baby, basically, but he was helping his older brother move in, and he was the type where if you gave him little jobs to do, he felt like, he was a worker kid,
yeah, yeah.
he wanted to be part of it, and when we drove away from dropping off my oldest, he was sitting in the back of the car, and I remember just like it was yesterday, he said to me, well, when do I get to go to college?
Yeah, exactly.
And I thought, oh my God, that's what every middle class parent
Your
wants to
heart
hear their
just like
baby say,
flutter, like, oh my
right?
gosh.
He's dropping off his older brother at college. He's seeing it firsthand. He's thinking, I want a room like that. I want a dorm like that. I want to be like Josh. I want to be like what he's doing. And now he's about to go to college. Like, this is his senior year. He's already gotten into the college that he wants to go to, which is not going to be cheap, but he's going to college. He's going to be a mile or so away from his older brother, who lives near the college, whatnot. I didn't have to wallow in the I'm so brokenness or I did so poorlyness. All I had to do was everything I could to construct a life in which it wasn't going to be the same for them. And they had lots of enrichment opportunities, right? My oldest went to a school that had arts and as a strong focus and had they went to the Kennedy Center. They, did stuff. It wasn't just sit down and, mind your business and put your finger over your mouth and all that type of stuff, And they didn't have any teacher tell them, you're the most ignorant Negroes I've ever met, blah, 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 like I had. It was all about enrichment, and I didn't have a lot of money. So how did we find the enrichment opportunities? Well, basketball was one of them. Put them in art school was one of them. This one is about to go to college now, did both football and lacrosse. And I figured out that both of those things weren't just putting your kids in a sport, they were cultures. Like the
Yeah,
lacrosse
the
lifestyle
cross
is a
culture and
lifestyle.
yeah, yeah.
Like, the other parents that get involved with your kid and your kid is going on trips with other people. And uh, imagine not having any of that enrichment and then people blaming it on you. You're just lazy. No, I'm not just lazy. I just don't have the same level of opportunities that your
Yeah.
kid has.
I mean, even just for like when you widen your perspective, you're also shrinking your blind spots. Like that's what's the beautiful part about it. Like when you get exposed to new and different things, right? Like it's twofold. And a child's not necessarily going to always know that. You know what I mean? It's like the adults that have to be able to share. And again, trying things, talking about different things, reading different things, but also experiencing different things. It just adds so much richness. Traveling and all of that. And again, there's some groups who don't get to do that as often. It's not the norm. Where people just like, oh yeah, I'm doing it. People take it for granted, and we should. And this again is why schools, public education, is so important, where more and more as many students have opportunities that they may not have. And we have to, as a community, we have to step up and step in, right? If we're talking about COINTELPRO, we're talking about mass incarceration, we're talking about mental health, we're talking about all of these things. yeah, it does have an impact on the psyche of a community, on the psyche of a man. You know, and so how do we step up and in as community members to do that? You know, how do we make sure? Now, yeah, there's a couple brothers like here who've been doing like a scouting program for young Muslim men on every Friday for almost my entire life. I mean, these men are set in their 70s. You can't tell because
Wow.
they you know they use henna in their beard so you don't see the gray. But they've been doing this for, and I look at all for them because I did it for like a decade, and I was like, all right, I fell asleep in the masjid once while I was supposed to be working with the kid. I was just spent, you know what I mean? And I'm like, these brothers are still. They take them camping, they take them to archery, they take them horseback riding. Right, like they're like stepping in and they're doing it. So, you know, we often talk about like, hey, they're in their 70s. That means it's our and the generation beneath us who's, again, as Mary Church Terrell used to say, we should be lifting as we climb. We have to continue these rites of passages, and they're too few and far in between. That rites of passage, that communal way of addressing issues, but it's so layered, man. You know, the idea of like, oh, they're just lazy, they just don't want to, and not thinking about complex issues usually have to have complex responses.
Ooh, you know what? You just triggered something for me. I know we got to wrap here, but I just said this yesterday. When you're talking about the type of problems we're talking about, the simpler your idea is, the dumber it is. When you talk about fixing schools, those are complex systems, and the dumbest ideas are the ones that sound like a silver bullet, the most simple ones, because there's no way that there's a simplistic answer to a complex problem, right? So when you talk, we were talking about, how what schools of the future, and what should we do with schools, and blah blah, and people would have these like one
You
idea.
just want, you just do this and everything's cured. Like, really?
Everything's cured. You just do this one thing, and it's all over with. It's a wrap. We just give everybody school choice or high dosage tutoring or whatever. And I'm not saying anything specific. I think high dosage tutoring is important. I think high quality curriculum is important. I think well prepared teachers is important. But I could keep naming things that I think are important. So if I took any one of those,
It's the ingredients, right? Like it's the
yes,
full
yes,
ingredients.
yeah,
It's
it'd
like,
be
oh,
like
all
cake
you need
makers saying
for
like,
good bread
if you
is
just get
yeast.
more eggs.
All you need for good bread is yeast. That's it. You
Yeah,
just got the
yeah,
good yeast. Like, yo, it's it's more than
uh,
yeast. The yeast is very
yeah,
important. You
yes.
need some other stuff too, you know?
What are you saying, that the yeast isn't
Yeah,
important?
exactly.
All right. Well, listen, man, I appreciate this conversation because I think, as always, we come to a positive. We can't just talk about problems as if the problem is going to be eternal. You have to have solutions. And in this case, I think we hit on many of them, but we have to keep having this conversation because it's going to keep having us. That's why we
It's
have to
going to
keep
keep
having this
happening. Us.
conversation. It's going to keep having us.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you, brother. Anything you got going on that you want to tell people about? Final word.
Yeah, you know what? We are recruiting our high school and college youth to for our paid apprenticeship, Freedom Schools Literacy Academy. It's in person here in Philadelphia. We have 4 or 5 sites. Our high school students, college students are supporting first, second, and third graders in literacy, positive racial identity, culture building, community building, but also learning just the fundamentals of like how have Black educators always poured into schools. What are their, as Akoso Lassane, Dr. Lassane talks about Black teaching traditions and techniques that have always been used. So we're doing that, but we also have a virtual national version. Usually about 13 states are represented in that. So if you're virtual homeschooling or other schooling, you want something for your first, second, and third grader in the summer, you can go on our website and sign up. But yeah, that's it's always exciting to see. I'm looking forward to seeing the high school and college youth pour into our group. And then well, and we're about to start recruiting for our next round of fellows. And these are students who participated, and then they're like, "Hey, you know what? I do want to major in go to college, major in education, some kind of related degree," and they get a network of support, financial support, academic support, as well as social and community support. And what that looks like, at least financially, is $5,000 a year, is last dollar scholarship as they matriculate through college. But then when they get to their fifth year of teaching, Chris, they get up to $20,000 retention stipend, just as a, you know what, thank you, for the important work, the critical work that you're doing um, in leading a classroom, right? And so, we wanted to just make sure we were connecting the dots between, what was so important and what's so needed.
I love it. I love it, love it, love it. Again, to enrichment opportunities. These are enrichment opportunities to
And
get kids
paid.
into things,
And
get young
paid.
people into
Hmm.
things. I'm about to, myself, I'm probably just about to fake youth and enroll myself and become a
Definitely.
kindergarten teacher on your dime. And, it's about to happen, man.
Listen, I know that's going to
Um,
happen one day because you've
it's
been
going to
talking
happen
about
one
that
day.
for a decade.
I'm telling you right
That would
now,
be your happy space.
I'm going to rethink kindergarten. I'm going to rethink kindergarten as a power year. And then I'm going to work with my people who are going to rethink middle school because I feel like that's another power zone we need to think about. So, anyways, as everybody listening and watching, please share this with others. We love doing Freedom Friday, and we love it when you all give us good feedback, which has been amazing over the time that we've been doing this. And as always, it's Friday, but you're not free. But hopefully, you're freer after this hour with Sharif El Mekki and me. We'll see you next time on Freedom Friday.